Again, the reason we've gone through all this stuff is because I think it very much applies to how we practice our faith.
Mm-hmm.
Are we practicing our faith based on, I do this, I get this, I get to receive this if I do this? Are we practicing our faith based on, I don't know, I just do this because.
Yeah.
Because someone told me to do it. Are we practicing our faith on, I don't want to look bad in front of the rest of the congregation, so I'm going to be a good boy?
Right.
Or is it, no, this is like what God has placed in me and the desires he's put in me and the motivations he's put in me, and this is my conviction. Here I stand. I can do no other.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Caroline Howard, a biblical counselor and certified life breakthrough coach.
And I'm Chris Oneth, marriage and family therapist and executive director of Downey Park Counseling Associates.
Welcome to Our Next Question, where we attempt to answer the questions of life through conversations in psychology and Christianity.
Remember, this is a place of discovery and definitely not the final answer.
Well, welcome back to Our Next Question. Our next question today, how do we apply moral development? So we're kind of continuing from last week when we talked about what is moral development. We're going to finish that with talking about Kegan's levels of consciousness and then kind of dive into that more. But first, I want to know, what book are you guys reading right now, or have you recently finished?
Oh boy.
Reading, listening to, because I know some of us listen.
Okay. What are you looking at me for?
Because of the look on your face.
Read.
Like you just got caught. Crap, I'm not reading right
Listen. No, you looked at me like, I know some of us listen. You looked over at me.
Did you feel judged? What is that inside of you that made you feel judged?
Yeah, right?
Caleb, you want to go first?
I have to look it up here.
Sure.
Okay.
I am currently reading two books, one of which is God Has a Name by John Mark Comer.
Nice.
It's his last book that I have to read. I've read all his other books at this point. Or most of them I've listened to. But yeah, so that's finishing that out. And then for fun, I'm reading The Reckoning of Roku.
2 books at once?
Well, yeah, I read through them very slowly, but I alternate. It's like, I have kind of like a nonfiction, like faith-based book,
Oh, right
and
on.
then a fun fiction book, which is based on the Avatar, The Last Airbender universe.
Oh, wow.
It's like,
So the one you're listening, the John Mark ones that you've listened to, does he read them?
yeah,
Okay.
and I love his voice and the way he reads it. It's really good.
Yeah. I love when I listen to a book, I so appreciate it when the author is reading it. You just feel it so much deeper. And when it's not, it's so hard for me to get into it.
He's a really fun one to listen to. Yeah.
That's cool.
Why is he
cool.
fun?
Oh, I just love like the intonation and the way he says words. Like there's so much more that I get out of it kind of in listening to his audiobook, because then I get like more of his communication style, and he kind of jokes around a bit, and
Do you do you listen to it at like advanced speed?
No. I'll
wow.
sometimes do that with like a podcast, but with his I like to let him
Well, it sounds
and
like
I have
it.
to let things sink in, because it's like deeper stuff
intense.
going on.
You listen to podcast fasts?
Every so often, if it's just like a podcast I listen to for fun, I'm like, I just kind of want to get through this episode like 1.25 or 1.5 times speed. I'll do it with YouTube videos all the time.
Please don't listen to us fast, people.
Wow.
Please.
I know. My head would
Well, then we just start talking slow.
That's right.
To us.
I've tried to listen to some of my audiobooks at like normal speed, and it sounds so slow. It's excruciating.
There's something psychological there, Chris.
Well, now I
everything
listen
in
to
you
it
needs to go fast.
at either a 1.5 or 2.
Holy
speed.
cow!
Oh,
I'm a
yeah.
normal. I have to do it right at the normal.
I got a
Sometimes
lot
for
to get
fun,
through.
I'll like listen to a podcast at like 3 times speed, and then like 0.75, and then jump back and forth, and it's a good time. You can do that
what
with
that
us.
does to your brain.
Mess around with our voices.
Right.
If you listen to people talk at 0.5 times speed, they sound drunk. Try it right now.
Oh,
Try it right now.
25 times
on our
speed.
episode right now.
Good gravy.
Do we sound drunk?
I hope not. I hope it doesn't sound drunk.
Now speed us up to 3 times, and do we sound like chipmunks?
There you go.
All right, Chris, what are you reading?
So I just got through with a book called, it's a very not Christian book, but there's a lot of good insight in it. Okay, it's called The Masculine in Relationship.
The Masculine in Relationship.
Yes, and
Okay.
so, well, oh, geez.
He's going to listen to it
Well,
now.
no, I'm not. But there's a subtitle it has, and you might want to cover your kids' ears.
Oh, gosh. Caleb just covered his own
Oh,
ears.
title details. That's
I
what I'm
love
looking
it.
for. Okay, it's called The Masculine in Relationship, a blueprint for inspiring the trust, lust, and devotion of a strong woman.
Wait, say that again?
now I've got you
Wait,
interested.
now I'm paying attention. The trust, lust,
and devotion of a strong woman.
is how to get that?
Yes,
Don't you already have that?
I certainly do.
Then why are you reading
just
the book?
read the book.
I'm checking up on this to make sure it's okay. No, I just read
I
that.
wrote the book. I'm just rereading that what I wrote.
And so
By Christopher Oneth?
I'm reading or listening to a book called Men's Work, a practical guide to face your darkness and self-sabotage and find freedom.
Yeehaw.
And I'm just
Sounds
checking
good.
this to make sure it's factual and accurate also. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait, who was that one by?
This guy, the other guy was something Youngblood. And this
Whoa.
is
That was very interesting.
Connor Beaton. Yeah.
Connor Beaton.
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
so I mean, some of these stuff, nothing ever totally. Oh yeah, this is totally speaking to me. Especially some of the examples they use, but there's so many good things in either of those books. But let me warn you, they are not Christian.
And I think it's so important to be able to discern, like to
Absolutely.
read something and be like, do I believe this to be true?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can like take some things, be like, oh, yeah, I could see that, and other
Totally.
things you're like, I don't really agree with that.
And I think
Yeah.
I could totally apply the gospel, especially to that the masculine in relationship. So you are totally getting. She's totally like.
I'm
looking it
like
up
buying
and-
these books now to read.
Get that thing. Not to be outdone. No, just kidding. You're gonna
No, it's like, I could actually
surreptitiously leave them on nightstands. Is that what we're talking about?
You'll
Well,
understand.
Highlight-
Oh, there was a knowing laugh over
dog ears. Something. I used to do that back in the day. I don't do that now.
Ah.
But man, when I was first married, it was like
there. Yeah.
highlight some stuff and hey, I think you should read this book. Don't mind what I highlighted.
Did it
though.
ever work?
No.
Yeah, that's what I hear a lot from.
I know.
Caroline?
So I just got done reading a book called Reconnected
Nice.
by Carlos Whitaker. And it is about, he spent 7 weeks screen free.
Wow.
He spent 2 weeks in a monastery with monks,
Whoa.
lived their life, did 23 hours of silence every day.
Good
prayed
for him.
5 times a day. And then 2 weeks, he lived with an Amish family and lived the Amish life.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It is. And so like the whole, like originally when he decided to do this, it was going to be about being disconnected from a screen. But then he realized he was reconnecting with what had been behind the screen the whole time.
Oh my gosh, that is super awesome.
So it is a very easy read. So even if you don't like to read, I highly
gotta
recommend
check
this
that
book.
out.
And I have like turned off notifications. It really just encouraged me, motivated me to do some things because I realized how much I was missing behind my screen. So super cool book. Super cool book. And then I'm listening to a book called Raising Emotionally Strong Boys
Nice.
by David Thomas. He is a licensed therapist of kids in Tennessee. So, and it's really good. Really good. That's all I got.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's finish up what is moral development so we can then move on to how we apply moral development.
Oh man, this may turn into a 3-episoder.
Episoder?
Episoder.
I like that. Episoder.
3-episoder.
I like episoders.
Let's see if we can do it in 2.
Okay.
Okay, so the next person we were talking about is Kegan, Robert Kegan. We talked about Eric Erickson last time. And again, this is important to realize because it's important to take note that some of us have not moved on to some advanced stages.
Yeah.
And this could be because of upbringing. This could be, our current thought process and how we've come to see and view the world, or certain challenges at each stage we may be avoiding.
Right.
So the other implication this has is even how we address people. right? I am not going to be able to sit with someone who is in an early stage of moral development and discuss like deeper, more theoretical and theological sort of like and philosophical understandings.
Yeah, so that's interesting because you're going to realize that if it's a kid in that stage, right? You're not going to have
it's going to be like, you're 12. What are you doing?
Conversation with your kid. But if it's a friend or a spouse who's stuck in that younger stage,
yes,
you're not going to realize that. So then it's just at first you might not realize that. So that's going to look different. But we might have to dive into that after we discuss Kegan.
Right. Okay. So Kegan has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stages. Well, 6. There is a 0 stage. And part of this is subject to or predicated upon one's actual physical abilities and what they can meet with themselves.
Okay.
Once the physical abilities come online, then it moves, again, as Maslow would say, into more philosophical or relational abilities and psychological abilities. So, okay, so the first stage is called the 0 stage. It's called the incorporative stage. And the thing that the culture that is there among this stage of a child is mothering, being mothered by one's primary caretaker.
Okay.
The main focus is, of course, the needs, physical needs a child has, and are they being met? And so their whole world is based upon, or the subject of their world is based upon their reflexes. Sensing, moving. It's like the rooting reflex. You turn, you've played the game with the baby, haven't you?
Yes.
You put the finger on the cheek and the baby turn,
Yeah.
And it's funny because they'll smash their own cheek trying to turn, right? And crying and
I think that's a game dads play, not moms.
Yes. So, okay. So this does not have Erickson does not necessarily have a comparison to this.
Yeah.
As we move along, neither does Kohlberg, who's the other guy we're going to talk about.
I don't think we're talking about Kohlberg.
A little bit. We'll just briefly.
I'll allow it.
Okay. So, so the next stage is impulsive, and what the child or person is subject to. What they don't know about is impulse and perception.
Yeah.
That's just unconscious.
Okay.
What they are aware of at this stage is their reflexes, their sensing, and their moving. So in the prior stage, they didn't know about their reflexes, their sensing, and their moving. And in this stage, they're becoming aware of them. So
the game's
baby's
not as fun
starting to
anymore.
move. Okay. Now, believe it or not, this stage, so the impulsive mind or impulsive stage is 2 to 6 years old.
Okay.
So 0 to 2, it's baby stuff. It's, okay. This is where it gets percent. We're going to start getting into percentages of the population now.
Okay.
So strap your seatbelts on. Okay. So I'm looking at 2 different charts here, and so they've numbered them differently. So I may have a correction here. I see stage 2 there. Yeah. Okay. We're cool. Excuse me. Okay. So, 0 is incorporative, 1 is impulsive, 2 is the imperial stage. So the subject or the thing that the child is unaware of is enduring disposition, needs, and interests. So they're not aware of their needs and interests.
Okay.
They are starting to get and have awareness of their impulses and perceptions. The age that this is appropriate with is 6 years old through adolescence.
Okay.
Crazy, huh? Okay, let me look at this. 6 years old through adolescence. Yes, okay. So the role is recognizing culture, school and family as institutions of authority, and role differentiation. Peer or gang I mean this means gang in your group of friends or whatever, which requires then role taking, right? So believe it or not, Kegan says age 6 years to adolescence, you're figuring out your role and your position. Now, this fits with moral development in the family, because if you get into different family systems, you would find that in the family there could develop a family scapegoat, or a family clown, or whatever.
Yeah.
But also outside the home, one starts to develop in school their awareness of their position and their role, subject to what they think others want from them. Huge distinction.
Yeah.
So according to Kegan, 6% of the adult population are in this stage.
Interesting.
6% of the adult population are still in a stage of, adolescence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because you said that was 6 to
6% of the population,
what was
6
the age?
through adolescence. Okay.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. Keep in mind this, as I get comfortable, this is, the idea is that it's pinging off of what is, there's a social construct to it. So on one level, social relationship with others, but the relationship with others is wholly subject to others, not what the individual sees as who they are, or developing who they are.
Yeah.
So in other words, I am what you want me to be or need me to be.
Yeah.
This is important, especially as it pertains to the faith, because our faith is very social, and there's a huge percent of Christians whose faith is wholly operated by what they think others want from them.
Yeah.
And so if you ask the Christian, if you have a week to yourself, I upped it up to a week. Yeah. Not a weekend, but a week to themselves, they may be lost as to how to answer that.
Gosh.
Because who they base themselves on is what they think others require them. Are you still hating on Kegan?
Yes.
Well, you have to change.
No, I'm not.
Okay. So stage 3 is what Kegan calls the socialized mind. And some say it's interpersonal, right? There is a culture of mutuality. It's reciprocal one-to-one relationships. So what is subject to the person or unaware is the mutuality of how important the play between individuals is. My role socially isn't just what I think you want from me. It's what I want from myself and what you want from me. Okay.
Is there a percentage on that one?
There is 58% of the adult population.
Okay.
What's then what the person there in that stage is aware of is the enduring disposition, their needs and interests, their wishes. They're starting to become aware of their own needs and interests. That's why there's an interaction there.
Yeah.
Right? Fascinating. Now, next stage. Stage 4, I think we're on, is the self-authoring mind. Now, the self-authoring mind, it's called different things in different areas. Some call it the institutional mind, right? And so the big stage here is where the individual develops a culture of identity or self-authorship. So in love and work, typically group involvement in career, admission to public arena. In other words, what is my place and what is my responsibility? Not just responsibility, but what is my initiative? What is my agency among those, among the world around me, among the people around me? So it's still an interplay of, okay, we exchange, but it's also I'm able to ask for what I need and want. But more importantly, what I know what I need and want.
Yeah.
I start to understand that. Okay.
Do we have a percentage on that one?
So they say this is 35% of the adult population.
Okay. That's impressive. I'm proud of you, 35%.
There you go.
Right? Because asking for what you need, but knowing what you need.
Oh my gosh.
Is huge.
Yes.
So Way to go.
So the guiding questions here are that I'm maintaining my own personal integrity, standards, and values. Am I?
Yeah.
Am I, maintaining my own standards and values? Am I living, working, and loving in the best of my ability? Mm-hmm. Am I achieving my goals and being guided by my ideals? Mm-hmm. And that's very different from, am I just doing what you want me to do?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because you even see, even the teenage rebellion, it starts off as a kid doing what mom and dad.
Yeah.
Then it gets to, no, me. And it's a re-up on being the 2-year-old.
Yeah. Right.
But then realizing, okay, it can't be all about me. It's about others too.
Yeah.
But still being a bit subject to others, where it's like, well, I want to please others, and don't want to rock the boat or anything else. And so then I may still struggle with, eliminating myself. But at this stage, at 35% of the adult population, it's, no, this is what's important to me.
Yeah.
So in a church where this might be important is, man, if you have a church going wayward or that's super legalistic, whatever, or super liberal, let's say that too.
Right.
It requires that individuality to say, dude, I don't know about that. In our country, I don't know about your country, but in our country, we just leave that church and go to another church. And then we gather either more liberals in one church and more conservatives in another church, instead of just sticking it out and boxing it out and saying, hey, how about we be okay with this tension?
Yeah.
But in order to be okay with tension, you have to be okay with yourself.
And that's huge.
Huge.
Very huge.
Okay. Rolling right along. Okay. So in the final stage, we call that, let me scroll back to where the reference point is. Oh, sit tight, please.
Is that the
stage 5 is the self-transforming mind. Self-transforming mind. The big issues there, what is subject was object last time. So what is subject, or what the person is not aware of, it is I am, and what the object is I have, authorship, ideology, and identity. In this stage, we become unattached to identities, roles, and beliefs. Mm-hmm. And so you lose your job, that's okay. That's not necessarily who you are.
Yeah.
And so it's even a further development of individuality, but in a healthy sense.
Yeah.
So if I'm okay with who I am truly, and someone cuts me off in traffic, I am not, Chris Oneth, I am not going to chase them down with my huge truck and smash them with my bumper. I am not going to push their car off. Anyway,
I'm so glad
mantras,
you're mature.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to be like, okay, that guy has his thing, and
Right.
I'm still me. Right? Or if someone makes fun of me for being bald, or saying a word wrong or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay, thanks.
Do you have people tell you say words wrong?
I remember one time, no, not really. Now that'll change. But I remember I had a professor, Nancy Taniguchi, over at Stan State. She was so brilliant. She would just rattle off things, and I was rapt with attention.
Yeah.
And I think she said something that I was like, and of course I'm trying to flex my smartness and prove how smart I am. So I go, wasn't it this way instead of that way? And she goes, oh, maybe I'm done. And then she just rattled on the next thing.
That is awesome.
She did not even
That is awesome.
She's so to be like, she didn't have to like prove herself or anything. I'm like, that is super rad.
I'm
Anyway,
gonna start doing that whenever you correct me.
I'm testing myself here. Is it like 6% of the population that's at stage 5?
1%.
No.
Okay, never mind. Even
One
less.
percenter.
The 1%.
I was like trying to remember all the previous percentages.
And some of
add
this
them up.
stuff, I know some of the explanations can be confusing and all this other stuff, the I am versus I have or whatever. Fair enough. But understand the main concept here is that why this is important is because when we are even in a church, when we're in a church with people, being aware of, okay, this potentially is where they are developmentally in their stages. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes you get a church, and by the way, legalism can look like liberalism, and it can look like conservatism. Mm-hmm. Legalism is a dogmatic approach to one's like ideology. In other words, nothing else exists. So if you don't believe that we should be doing this in some far off country, then you are ridiculous and horrible. That is legalism.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not working to feed the poor every single day, then you're a capitalist, whatever.
Yeah.
That's legalism. But legalism is also, if you're giving to the poor, you're just feeding their drug habits and you're not helping them at all. So another example of a type of legalism.
The self-transforming mind person just makes me think of a person who I can have I can disagree with what you believe.
Yes.
I can have an intelligent, calm conversation with you about it, and then we can go eat a meal together.
Yes. Because part of the guiding questions of the self-transforming mind, the 1%ers, are, how do I know what I'm saying or thinking is true?
Right. And so the reason you go into that conversation or disagreement with someone is to learn.
Yes.
Not to change their mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if we find ourselves approaching someone to change their mind, then we are not necessarily at a stage morally that we can. And it sounds weird to even say that. It's like, listen, I'm not saying you're a degenerate.
Yeah.
Just saying,
right.
Maybe you're not at a place where you're totally comfortable with your beliefs.
Remember, only 1% of adults
1%er, man.
This.
Of course it's me. Of course, it's true. I'm the 1%er. Thank you. Or even are there multiple ways of looking at this? Is there certain truths that I'm not understanding that I need to understand, right? What lens am I looking at this through? Is there a perspective I'm missing? Am I too attached to this idea to be able to hold it up to the light of the Lord and say, should I be,
Yeah.
Right. So
that's good.
Yes, totally. Go ahead.
I'm curious, what's the primary mover between these stages? Can we move ourselves to future stages of development? Is it outside, things that happen to us that move us into these stages? Maybe it's a combination. I don't know. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I'm
sure there's different theories on that.
Oh,
too.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I would say, just like Erickson would say, there's a certain, there is a tension or there's a challenge we have to meet, right? So potentially as mature adults, we've been through the challenge of having our butt kicked several times by life and recognizing at times the dogma I held does not apply to this. And so we're going to get into that when we talk about stages of faith in our next couple podcasts. But boy, all the things I thought were true have now been blown to smithereens. And so then I have to say, maybe this is true also. And so being able to hold that suspension instead of being so black and white, it's this way or that way. And I'm always one to say, if there's a concept of black and white in our mind, then it has to have application somewhere. So maybe there are some things I want to be black and white about, right? I want to be black and white about using heroin. I shouldn't do it. I'm not going to say, a little bit.
Good choice. Proud of you.
Yeah, I'm not going to say. So now that's being ridiculous, of course, being hyperbolic. But at the same time, maybe when it comes to going outside my marriage or whatever, or in whatever capacity, if I'm flirting or if I'm spending time with or whatever, and saying, you know what, I'm going to protect myself because the garden in my marriage is what needs to be tended to. And maybe I need to challenge some of those rules that I've believed about marriage so that I can grow and that my wife is truly an other. And we'll get into that in a future podcast. So I want to be sure I answer your question. Remind me of your question again.
So it was, how do we move between these stages?
I think we move through the stages by challenges that that come our way. Oftentimes what people do is they do not want to address the challenges, so they avoid the question or they shut it down.
So it does take us leaning in as well.
It. Exactly.
This is where therapy could come in handy.
Yes. Well, and that could get into even a style of therapy that is more challenging.
Yes.
Right? Sure. Rather than one that's more like, well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? which
I feel
that
like
can be challenging too.
Yeah, and I feel like I've even like experienced that in the last couple of years as I've done different types of therapy, like talk therapy, EMDR, even moving into somatic work of like, well, this is helping this, but this is still struggling, so let me try something else.
Love that.
Again, leaning into it. I like how you said that. We have to lean into it as well. And being self-aware of where am I at? Where do I want to be?
Now I can see why the whole addiction thing keeping us out of stages, because if we're not engaging with, you know, the different conflicts that are arising in our heads or our lives, then we're not pushing through and
we're actually
spending that
back.
time. Yeah. And we're not advancing to the next stage. Yeah.
Exactly. Without challenge, without some discomfort, that's sanctification.
Yeah.
So without some sort of discomfort, we're going to be like, I'm just avoiding things left and right. And then I've trained myself to avoid things left and right. And I've then trained my children. And even in our even potentially in my marriage, I've learned to avoid things, and my spouse has learned to avoid things. So we just kind of keep it under wraps. So we live, instead of potentially a colorful and rich life, we live one of muted colors. And then we teach our kids to do the same. Now, at any moment that those kids become like autonomous and start to realize things, and then look back on mom and dad and say, you guys weren't necessarily like bring up conversations or willing to talk about certain things or explore certain things. That is, that's a huge, I mean, I've seen a lot of like separation from that, where it's like, well, my parents won't understand, or they won't explore these things. And so it takes, I guess, digging to deeper levels inside of us, but also digging to deeper levels beneath just behavior. Right. So then if, for example, if someone's lying, you know, an early developmental moral stage would say lying is wrong.
Yeah.
It's very concrete.
Right.
A more advanced moral stage would say, hey, now tell me why you're lying.
Yeah.
Oh, you're lying because you're afraid. Well, tell me more about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Amidst all this, I want to briefly go over Kohlberg really quick.
Yeah,
Lawrence
we're going to
Kohlberg.
go over Kohlberg, and then we are going to make this kind of a 3-parter, guys.
I am not staying here another minute
No,
in
you
this
don't.
studio to make it a...
No, we'll come back and do it at another time, but...
Okay, so the stages of Kohlberg are 3 primary big stages, and even people have conceptualized this in a pyramid as well, starting from the bottom going to the top. So the ages 3 to 7 years for Kohlberg would be pre-conventional. So the moral reasoning is based on reward and punishment.
Yep.
Those 2 stages there are within that pre-conventional are avoiding punishment. I don't want to get busted, so I won't do that.
Yeah.
And right above that is self-interest.
So you say avoid punishment. I just want to, because I think of some kids who don't say, I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm not going to do that. They say, I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to hide that.
Right.
So what makes that... How does that develop? Like, how is it that some kids go to the, I'm not going to do it, I don't want to get in trouble, and some kids go to the, I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to hide what I'm doing.
Right, and then compound the problem potentially.
Yeah.
I think they go hand in hand. It's like we want to avoid doing what's wrong, but when we do what's wrong, we want to hide. That's all under the avoiding punishment mentality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? So you get a taste of hiding. So I hit it this time. I didn't get in punishment. Oh.
But I think there's still
that I know what I'm doing.
guilt.
Found a loophole.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway.
Right. Which kind of goes back to that whole thing we talked about. I think it was the last episode of, oh yes, when you were doing your baby crying. A baby cries and you go pick it up. It learns. If I go, wah, mom picks me up.
Right.
So if a child does something wrong and you don't catch it and they don't get a punishment, and this isn't on
have
parent.
they truly done something wrong?
Right,
They still know they have
know
that
it's
expectation
wrong.
of punishment,
Yeah,
right? And that's what
but
provides
they
that
got
moral.
away with it.
Yep.
Then it's, oh, well, now I can do this again and get away with it
Right?
again.
It's all based on the punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's even experimentation. You know, some kids might be like, I didn't even consider lying. Holy cow. Had I known that be available. versus, no, I didn't do it. And then mom and dad go, okay. And they're like, well, wait a second. There's a reward. So the morality. Now, by the way, according to Kohlberg and other theorists, like there could be lying for different reasons. Like there could be lying to avoid punishment, or there could be lying out of a deeper ethical, like, well, I'm going to lie because to tell the truth would cause greater punishment to society and this whole thing as a whole. So then you get all that sticky,
I really like
business.
Kohlberg just looking at this. This makes the most sense to me. I enjoyed digging into the other ones too.
We
But
all
I'm
have our
looking at
favorites.
this and I'm like, oh man, this makes so much sense.
So like the two stages again in the pre-conventional are avoiding punishment and self-interest. So avoiding punishment, of course, moral reasoning is based on direct consequences.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's like, well, I don't want to get in trouble, so I don't want to do that. The second stage in there, the self-interest, actions are seen in terms of rewards rather than moral value. So, if I tell the truth, I get a cookie.
Yeah.
Not like I'm going to tell the truth because it's the right thing to do.
So this is at the point where you as a parent, when your kid does something right, should overly
Positive reinforcement.
Yeah, overly give them positive reinforcement.
But potentially, as a kid, that's just going to be a reward they're going to respond to.
Yeah.
Right? And believe it or not, there's churches that have not gone past the pre-conventional stage. This is there's individuals in churches that haven't gone past the pre-conventional stage because, for example, the guy with the midlife crisis, the guy who's quote unquote doing it all right, he's that quote unquote faithful husband, faithful father, and then I don't know, at 40 years old he blows out with cocaine and prostitutes, and you're like, what happened? Well, potentially his motivation was because he didn't want to get in trouble. Not because he's like, no, that's not who I want to be.
Okay.
I think you brought up an interesting question of like the avoiding punishment. How many people are Christian just because they're afraid of going to hell?
Aha.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You see this in certain Christian publications. There was I was listening to a podcast where I heard a book, and the book was addressing women's issues in the church or whatever. And the book mentioned Satan more than it mentioned Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Which tells me there's a whole punishment motivation, and the authors were operating from a pre-conventional punish motivation sort of morality.
Yeah, interesting.
How weird is that?
Yeah.
Now, the sad thing about this is if we're operating according to, well, and again, this can be again at the self-interest stage then gets into great is your reward. I mean, again, I don't want to poo-poo because there's layers to this, but hey, great is your reward in heaven. Like I'm gonna just muscle it out because there's something's better in heaven.
This makes me think of a church I attended at one point in time in my life. I won't say if it's childhood or adulthood, but if someone in the church had an affair, or if someone got pregnant out of wedlock,
Whoopsie.
they were brought in front of the church.
The tribunal.
Yes, and had to confess it and receive their punishment of, well, now you can't be a part of this or that or whatever in it.
Oh, public humiliation.
And so it was like this scary.
Were they flogged too?
Scare tactic of this is why you don't do bad because then you.
Well, and granted, let's be fair. The people in that church were truly operating from a sincere place, thinking based on their own, fears and motivations. Yeah. This is what would keep me in line.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, second stage is the second category containing the third and fourth stages are the conventional mode of operation. So the third is the good boy attitude. Good behavior is about living up to social expectations and rules. So again, moving away from just punishment and consequences. Now it's what's expected of me socially. Sound like any body of people you know?
No.
No? Okay, well, weird. And then the fourth stage is law and order and morality. So moral reasoning considers societal laws and expectations. So I wouldn't do that because I'd look like a fool, right? And granted, listen, even if we used a little bit of these moral reasonings, it's not a bad thing. I would always joke about it when I was a teacher. I'd always joke about, I don't want to do anything that I wouldn't want to put on a headline.
I don't want to do that. Yeah.
Teacher puts kid in headlock. Well, okay, so I'm not going to put the kid in a headlock. I don't want to see that on the, anyway. So, okay, so societal laws, as in, look, if this can be even as far as a punishment is concerned. Well, this guy, Joe, stole food for his family.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, it brings me great pains to say this, but we have to punish Joe, because if we don't, then that's going to teach society that they could just steal food.
Are you giving the premises of Les Miserables?
Yeah, right.
So it sounds a lot like legalism, like rule following. The rules are there, I should follow them. Then I'm a good person if I'm following the rules. Not necessarily like the punishment avoidance, though that is a factor, I think, but it's like that's how I gauge if I'm a good person or not.
Well, then we fold in even God's love. The problem with that is that if we run into hardship, then our moral reasoning will say, God, haven't I been a good person?
Yeah.
Haven't I been a good person? I still am going through this. What is wrong with you? That's some crazy stuff.
Moralistic therapeutic deism.
Oh, no.
Throw some big words.
Jeez, man.
Caleb.
We'll get into that in another episode.
Do you want me to move? You can just come sit over here.
I'm comfortable over here.
He's in his throne. He's fine. Okay, final stages, 5 and 6, are the post-conventional stages. Number 5 stage after law, order, morality is the social contract. Rules are seen as social agreements that can be changed when necessary because there's nuance. So for the most part, we don't want to steal. But understanding that if Joe stole, like there's some deeper factors as to why he stole.
Yeah.
Right? And so, maybe we make him work the food off instead of, as they did with Jean Valjean. They put him in a work camp. And then, oh my gosh. Well, then what? He steals from the priest.
Right. He goes right back to it.
And the police catch him and bring him back. And the priest was like, oh,
here's some grace,
you forgot the candlesticks.
Yeah.
There's worth so much more, which is an amazing scene.
Right.
And it transforms Jean Valjean's life. Grace
is transformative, that's for sure.
So believe it or not, okay, so let me speak to that for 1 second.
Okay.
Believe it or not, sometimes with all of these stages need to be built upon the other. So we don't understand grace until we understand that there is a concrete law, right?
Yeah.
Or we understand there's, even pre-conventional and conventional ways of must be dones.
Yeah.
It's only through those that we are able to apply grace and even understanding so that we get to a post-conventional type of stage. So, yes, I did this wrong thing, but much has been forgiven me. And now that inspires me and empowers me to forgive others and love them and not just see people as their actions, but see people as their motivations also. All right.
Yeah.
Social contract final stage in Lawrence Kohlberg is universal principles. So on this, moral reasoning is based on universal ethical principles and justice. So I think it's interesting because then we get into the sort of social justice aspects of some of the churches in the area, which I totally believe in consideration and having a conversation about. And to whatever degree, we might be uncomfortable to hear some of these things, it doesn't mean that we should just shut them down.
Yeah.
We should hear the voice because there are people who are their actions are motivated by deeper things that we can't just assume this is what's going on, right? If a guy tells me, I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about, maybe I shouldn't take that personally to the point where I try to shut him down and I argue him in equal capacity.
Yeah.
But moreover, become interested in who he is.
Because I almost feel like, in a sense, right? You're going down to his level.
Sure.
Right.
In kind.
Yeah, his developmental level, or what
Right. Right. And so I would say, and again, the reason we've gone through all this stuff is because I think it very much applies to how we practice our faith. Mm-hmm. Are we practicing our faith based on, I do this, I get this, I get to receive this if I do this? Are we practicing our faith based on, I don't know, I just do this because someone told me to do it? Are we practicing our faith on, I don't want to look bad in front of the rest of the congregation, so I'm going to be a good boy?
Right.
Or is it, no, this is like what God has placed in me and the desires he's put in me and the motivations he's put in me, and this is my conviction. Here I stand. I can do no other. Mm-hmm. Martin Luther. Caleb is frantically writing over there.
Yeah. I just take notes. Yeah. That's fun.
We'll post Caleb's notes in the show notes. No.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's a lot. That was a lot.
That was a lot. So we do want to get into like, how do we apply all of these stages kinds of things. We want to talk about how do we move from a stuck stage that we might be in.
Sure.
How do we talk to an adult who's stuck in an earlier stage who maybe doesn't want to move? And we're going to do all of that on the next episode.
If you've liked what you heard, if it has somehow moved you or gets you to think about other things, by all means, leave a comment. That would be super awesome and helpful. Also, please leave a review and tell how many friends?
7.
7 friends.
7 friends.
And they'll tell 7.
Completion. Perfection.
And so on. And so on.
I don't know. Maybe 12? I don't know. Jesus had 12 disciples.
Like tell your 12 disciples.
Next time. Thanks for joining us today as we continue our journey talking about life's many questions.
To stay connected with us, you can follow us at Downey Park Counseling on both Facebook and Instagram. You can also follow Caroline on Instagram at Relatable Caroline. And make sure you tune in next week for our next question.